APEC leaders are preparing to make their way to South Korea at the end of this month to partake in the multilateral meeting in the city of Gyeongju. With more press perspective today. Hello, welcome to Wednesday's edition of Press Perspective. It's October 1st here in Seoul. I'm Min Sunhee. We are now counting down exactly 30 days to the two-day APEC Leaders Meeting in the Korean city of Gyeongju starting October 31st. For more on the upcoming multilateral meeting, I have Fabian Kretschmer with German news agency DPA here in the studio. Fabian, welcome back.
I'm very excited to be here.
I also have freelance journalist Yang Chien-Hao from Taiwan. Chien-Hao, it's been weeks since we last spoke. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, long time no see, and it's also good to come back to here.
Right, Fabian, we shall start with you. Let's begin then with some background information, perhaps, about the APEC forum. What is it? How does it work? Why is it relevant, Fabian?
Yeah, let's start with the name APEC. That stands for Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. That already gives you some clues what it's about. Namely, it's a regional forum, Asia-Pacific region. It was basically expanding in the last year, so now it covers member countries from Taiwan to New Zealand to Peru, Canada. So mainly in the Asia-Pacific region, but very broadly that expanded quite a lot. And it is about economic cooperation, so about trade, facilitating trade, reducing tariffs, facilitating business, etc., those kind of things. I would say the importance or the relevance of APEC is its economic might. It represents countries that generate more than 60% of the global GDP and I think 40% of the world's population. So it's really huge. How does it work? The highlight of APEC is always the Leaders Summit, an annual summit that this time will be in South Korea. And of course, it's very spectacular because head of states will come and gather. But it also has like ministerial meetings, working groups, etc. Maybe one difference compared to other organizations like the European Union or the World Trade Organization, it's not binding. It's mainly on a voluntary basis, so to speak. So that is a strength and also a weakness of the APEC because, yeah, basically what people decide, what the countries decide is yeah, on a voluntary basis. And why is it relevant? I think not only the economic aspect, I think also the geopolitical aspect, because you have many countries who, let's say, China, US, Russia, who basically during this summit will get a stage to engage diplomatically on an informal level. And I think that's quite relevant today.
Right. And speaking about relevance, Chien-Hao, what aspects of this year's APEC here in South Korea appears to be making headlines?
Indeed, things are looking very different now since President Trump has been elected again. A lot of things what the United States, the government is doing feels pretty uncertain and unpredictable. Right now, the two biggest main issues are first, it's like the United States and China relations, and the second will be President Trump's tariff policy, which has already had an impact on many countries around the Asian Pacific area. And on top of that, South Korea has gone through another change in government with the new Lee Jae-myung administration signalizing that it wants to push for dialogues between North and South Korea and with the United States too. These are likely the key topics that reporters will be focusing on APEC this year. And at the briefing to foreign journalists 2 weeks ago, South Korean's foreign minister Cho Hyun has already told us that Chinese President Xi Jinping is almost certain to attend the APEC summit. That probably means that if President Trump and President Xi meet face-to-face in Gyeongju together, and people are wondering that what kind of interaction the two leaders will have. And key issues on the table between the United States and China, including whether Trump will let TikTok operating in the United States, and the tariffs both sides have been slapping on each other, which has really hit their economies on both sides. And we'll be watching closely to see if the two leaders can make any progress or find any solutions when they sit down together. And something else interesting with APEC coming up, President Trump has also said that he's open to have dialogues with Chairman Kim Jong-un without any preconditions. So there's fully speculations that the APEC summit in Gyeongju this time could even become a turning point for renewed United States and North Korea contact. And maybe, just maybe, we could see Chairman Kim make a personal visit to South Korea.
Right, and before we delve further into that, Fabian, with regard to the potential summit between the leaders of the US and China, what role do you suppose can the South Korean president play?
Yeah, so the South Korean president sees himself as a bridge builder, as a mediator between those two world powers. And I think the message that Lee Jae-myung wants to deliver is that we can manage both relationships in a constructive way. We can have trade with China and we can have trade with the US, and also can be security partners with the US. That is the message, but the question is, will that work? So I would say the geopolitical tensions are quite high, and it's actually a risky strategy. Most countries want to stay under the radar. They want to keep a low profile, not to get within the crossfire of this conflict. So I would say if the potential summit between Trump and Xi Jinping works well, then this could also have a positive effect on South Korea. But if it becomes a disaster, that could also be a possibility that, you know, Xi and Trump will not get along, then maybe this could also have a negative effect on South Korea. So I'm very excited journalistically to see what will happen, because the US-China relation is the most consequential relationship of our time.
Right, indeed. Chien-Hao, as you mentioned, there is also quite a bit of speculation about a possible summit between President Donald Trump, US President Donald Trump, and North Korea's Kim Jong-un. What factors, Chien-Hao, do you suppose might facilitate a summit between Mr. Trump and North Korea's Kim Jong-un?
I just mentioned that President Trump, he said he's willing to talk with Kim Jong-un without any conditions. In fact, back in late September, North Korea's state media has quoted Kim himself during the speech at the Supreme People's Assembly, saying that he has very good memories having talks with President Trump. And Kim also added that if Washington drops what he called its vain obsession with denuclearization and faces reality, then there will be no reason not to meet with the United States leaders. But I also want to stress today's situation is so different from President Trump's first term. Back in 2018 and 2019, President Trump, then South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un, they have met several times indeed. North Korea was at least saying that it want to work or taking some efforts toward denuclearization of Korea Peninsula. Even though many people are doubting their sincerity, still, at that time, provocations against South Korea and to the United States has really decreased. Fast forward to the after pandemic and through President Yoon Suk-yeol's term, things have shifted again. We can see that North Korea has taken a much tougher stance, even building close ties with Russia. Look at that, they have already sent troops, tens of thousands of the soldiers to Ukraine to support Russia's war in Ukraine, and making the situation even more complicated. So we all saw it earlier in September. Putin and Kim Jong-un, they both went to China, meeting President Xi to mark the Victory Day, the parade. We all saw that, standing alongside with President Xi, and it is very clearly looked like the three country leaders were presenting a united front against the United States leading world order. So looking ahead, whether it's at this APEC summit in Gyeongju or in the coming years, if the leaders of the United States and South Korea and even North Korea actually sit down together, if that really happened, will Pyongyang still willing to push for denuclearization for the whole Korea Peninsula? Honestly, that seems very difficult now than it was for like 6 or 7 years ago. Still, President Trump might try to turn the North Korea into the showcase movement, because once think about it, if President Lee Jae-myung and Trump and Kim Jong-un meet together, they will totally dominate the headlines across the global media. But the reality is North Korea has kept expanding and upgrading its weapons, its power, the military capabilities, and continues to slam United States and South Korea on joint drills, the military exercises. In the past, even if Pyongyang wasn't serious, it was still saying that, oh, I'm willing to have at least trying to take some efforts on denuclearization. But now Kim Jong-un doesn't seem interested in mentioning it at all, which raises the real concern. Will the Washington authority end up making concessions first just to make that big shows happen?
Right. Well, the optics of having all those three leaders come together would be quite symbolic here in the country. Fabian, moving forward, President Lee Jae-myung has pledged to push for an AI initiative at this year's APEC Leaders Meeting in the city of Gyeongju to ensure responsible AI use. What advances in the arena do you foresee at this upcoming gathering?
Yeah, I think what we will see is more the starting point of a debate that deals with so many complex questions that I think there will not be a breakthrough soon. But the responsible AI use is a key topic of our times. Lee Jae-myung has recognized that and is pushing this topic. For example, recently he gave a speech at the UN, and he also made responsible AI use a central topic of his speech. South Korea, in my opinion, is in a good position to be a leading force on that field because, first of all, it has a tech-savvy population. It is a high-tech economy, leading in many technologies, also relating AI. It knows what it's talking about, so to speak. And it is a third country. It is not China. It is not the United States, which are the other two world powers for AI. And I'm sure there are many, many countries in the world who have an interest that neither of those two world powers will dominate those rules. South Korea is a more, how can I say, maybe neutral or maybe also non-threatening country just by its history and also by its size. So I think it could come up with suggestions because there are many sensitive topics included. Responsible AI use, I mean, what I think about is actually how will militaries in the world use AI? Or the big tech companies, what algorithms, what AI can they incorporate in apps? Should there be a global framework? I mean, that would be an ideal solution when companies from all over the world would agree to a legal framework. But I mean, that is very complex, so I think we will only see a starting point to this discussion.
Fabian, I agree with you. So many questions, so few answers with regard to AI. Chien-Hao, as Fabian mentioned at the start of our talk, APEC's objective is to foster economic cooperation and integration within the Asia-Pacific region by promoting free trade and investment. Now, some claim this stands in sharp contrast to the Trump administration's America First policy. Keeping that in mind, what are your prospects with regard to a potential joint Gyeongju declaration at this year's summit?
Compared to World Trade Organization, WTO, actually APEC's dialogue mechanism is way more looser, or should I say flexible. It is unenforceable indeed. It's more like officials and representatives from different countries getting together in one place, talking things through, coordinating with each other, with their own national policies with other members, looking at the region as whole to promote a greater trade integration you have just mentioned, and liberalization across the Asia-Pacific region. But as you just mentioned, President Trump, his America First approach has indeed carried a strong protectionist tone. He's been putting pressure on lots of countries, in some cases almost using threats to push them into talks that end up with requiring more concessions to the United States. And that's why many people are worried that will the core values of APEC, like multilateral trade and economic liberalization, actually be carried forward, or will it be not that important anymore at this APEC summit? What we know for now is that South Korea, as the hosting countries this year, is pushing all of the APEC members to sign a joint document, tentatively called a Gyeongju Declaration, Gyeongju Songon. We don't know the exact contents and wording yet, but clearly the goal is to get all of the members to reaffirm their commitment to trade integration and liberalization. The tricky part is that the United States, as one of the APEC's core members, has already raised trade barriers in the past several months. President Trump has shown very little interest in the WTO. And within the United States, China, and Russia, these three countries are all competing with each other. Reaching a consensus is indeed going to be extremely difficult. So the big question is whether the South Korean government can really step up as a mediator, convincing major powers and even the rest of the members to come together and embrace multilateral trade and economic openness. That will be the real test of the new Lee Jae-myung government at this APEC summit in Gyeongju.
Right. Fabian, beyond the APEC leaders meeting, another event that is garnering quite a bit of attention is the APEC CEO summit. Who are the heavyweights expected to attend that particular summit, and what issues of interest are on the business front there?
Yeah, when you look at the potential CEO list that is expected to visit Gyeongju, then you realize how important this region is, especially in terms of technology. I would assume that the big bosses from South Korea will be there. For example, Samsung CEO Lee Jae-yong and SK Chae-tae-won, SK Hynix, Samsung Electronics. I mean, those are the big players when it comes to semiconductors. Then Jensen Huang from NVIDIA could also come. Basically, all the Silicon Valley CEOs who maybe from Apple, OpenAI. I mean, nothing is confirmed yet, and I think there will be last-minute confirmations. But I think that we should look out for. And then, of course, Chinese companies. I mean, I would be very curious to see, for example, the Alibaba CEO or Pinduoduo, that's the company behind Temu. I mean, basically the Chinese tech companies, they are right now expanding into Western markets, also including South Korea. Will they come or not? I think, at least for Korean and US CEOs, I think one of the interests would be to get China and the US along very well, because they suffer from trade tensions, they suffer from tariffs, they want to do business with both big world powers, with both markets. And I think this will be one of the tensions between head of states who have to, pay attention to their national interests, which not always align with company interests. And I think it will be interesting to see what will be the statements of the CEOs compared to their respective head of states.
Right, for sure. Chien-Hao, what are some of the events that you would like to cover beyond the official multilateral meeting and, of course, the sideline summits?
There's something I really want to point out that here. As many of you know, I am from Taiwan, and because of pressure from China, my country doesn't have many chances or opportunities to take part in international organizations. APEC is actually one of the very few multilateral platforms where Taiwan is able to participate under the name of Chinese Taipei. And it is also one of the rare occasions where Taiwanese government officials, representatives can meet and have interactions with the leaders from China, from South Korea, from Japan, and from the United States and many other countries, all in the same place in one time. So naturally, Taiwan's media always pays close attention to the question, who will our government send this time to participate APEC, and how will China respond that to choice. And in the past, under President Tsai Ing-wen's period, the most high profile, the most famous guy, representative our government sent is Maurice Zhang Zhongmo, the founder of TSMC. He has been attended for 2 times, as I remember. And last year, during President Lai Ching-te's first year in office, it was former economic minister and the former vice premier Lin Xin-yi. But for this year's APEC meeting, the summit, the representative hasn't been decided yet. As And since APEC is a relatively loose economic forum and a consultative mechanism, so it doesn't carry heavy political weight. That's why even Taiwanese officials, envoys, and Chinese officials do meet together. They usually there are no like fireworks or direct confrontations. But given the ongoing trade war between the United States and China, and with Taiwan now also in negotiations with Washington authority over tariffs, the bigger question is how can Taiwan position itself as the world's core hub of semiconductor manufacturing, the foundry, and Taiwan needs to find a way to balance the risk between both the United States and China while maximizing our own benefits and securing a stronger role in the international community. And that's exactly why this issue, Taiwan's APEC participation and how it plays out, has become such a hot topic for our journalists back home.
Right. And Fabian, what about you? What are some stories do you plan to cover during the APEC gathering here in the country?
Yeah, I'm afraid I have to give a boring answer because working for a newswire means you are stuck with your laptop attending press conferences. Maybe when you're lucky you have a little bit of time for networking, but probably you will not have time for a proper dinner, but just stuff some sandwich or so. So I will be probably busy doing the hard news. But if I would have more time, then I would also pay attention to actually what Chien-Hao said. I'm personally very interested in the conflict or the geopolitical conflicts on the sideline. I think that is something we should not forget. In my opinion, it's a shame that Taiwan can only, be represented under Chinese Taipei, and that there's so much pressure on this peaceful, democratic governed island that it cannot be represented. I think that's a shame. I'm looking forward how Taiwan can manage the threats that it daily faces, really on a daily basis. And I think in this region, I wish that South Korea also pays attention that something what we've seen in Ukraine, that another country attacks another country, will definitely not happen in this region. And for this, we need awareness. And I think at least APEC, even though it's an economic forum, it will also be a platform for those discussions, and it will also give a platform for Taiwan to present itself.
Right, for sure, for sure. And personally, I do hope you get a chance to enjoy the delicacies in Gyeongju. The food there is quite amazing. All right, Fabian, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Chien-Hao, thank you very much for your insights.
Thank you.
Right, that ends this edition of Press Perspective. Thank you for watching. See you same time tomorrow.